If you've been following my videos over the last 9 months or so, you will know that I've been painting and collecting 6mm Wars of the Roses armies for the Battle of Bosworth models from Bacchus. Way back when I decided to do this period, I looked at several rule sets, and after a long period of umming and ahhing, I saw a couple of really excellent rules reviews for Test of Resolve, a set of rules written by Tim Cooper and David Knight. Now, this rule set was released in 2021, so it's been around for a couple of years and is well supported with scenario supplement books and free downloads including a QRS sheet and copies of the cards. I've played some little tests of the rules as I've been painting the miniatures to understand combat, for instance, but until now I haven't had a full-size battle, so I cleared my gaming table and set up a game with two similar sized forces for a simple run through of the rule system from beginning to end. The rules are scale agnostic, so while the rulebook has plenty of pictures of lovely painted 28mm figures, I've created my army around 6mm miniatures. The central theme of the rules is the resolve of the troops to continue fighting. This is an amalgam of casualties, fatigue and leadership, and is a neat way to simplify the effects of combat on an army's willingness to continue to fight. One of the things that attracted me to these rules was the fact that the turns are not neatly ordered by an I go you go system. Instead, the action is driven by a set of cards which gives the game a much more irregular and dramatic tempo. No side can be certain of what will happen next, and the luck of the card draw means gameplay is never boring or predictable. Entertainingly frustrating is probably the best way to describe it. The cards determine movement, melee, firing and the chance to strengthen resolve. There are also event cards and some very entertaining cards that can flummox or flabbergast the players. I can see this being a very entertaining in a large multiplayer game. My test game involved two small, similar-sized armies facing off against each other across the flat field. Although the armies were similar in size, their composition was slightly different to allow for a range of circumstances and test different aspects of the rules. This was a learning experience for me after all. Each company starts the game with a number of resolve points, and these are indicated with a small dice behind the base. As the combat progresses, these resolve points are lost and also get removed from each battle's morale. When the battle reaches 0 morale, it has to test to see if it continues fighting. One of the things I learned quickly was that battles need to move as a cohesive force, and this means the commander needs to be careful with the movement of individual companies. Just because you've rolled maximum movement doesn't mean you have to use it all. Indeed, it's probably wise to try to average out your movement so that companies move more or less together, because isolated units have a penalty in melee, all of which gives the players plenty to think about even during the early stages of the game when they're just moving troops into position. Because play is determined by the draw of cards, it's not a given that archery will dominate the opening of a battle. Again, the player needs to decide if they will ignore a move or a melee card in the early stages of the game in favour of firing. One of the other things I like about these rules is that archers have a second battlefield role after the two sides get stuck into each other. Whether voluntarily or involuntarily, they can withdraw and form into light infantry, changing from a wide formation into deep like other infantry. And as light troops, they have a significant penalty in melee when fighting alone, but used as a supporting company, referred to in the rules as outnumbering, they can add bonuses to existing melees. In my test game there was a prolonged period of archery, but once the Lancastrian archers were forced to withdraw behind their haven companies, forming into light infantry, it was prudent to close the gap and begin melee as soon as the cards allowed. By this stage both sides were pretty close, so it wasn't long before the first melee took place. As with firing, there's a handy look-up table summarising all the modifiers each side may have to their opposed D12 rolls in melee. Even the most disadvantageous circumstances, there is a small chance of an upset, and there's no such thing as a sure thing. But as with any other rule set, stacking the modifiers in your favour is part of the skill of command, and makes for a very tactical feel to the combat which I enjoyed. Players have to think carefully before throwing units into a melee, ensuring they have the right support at the right time to maximise their chances. But as mentioned earlier, the tempo of the game is never predictable, and just when you think you have the upper hand, the opposing side gets 4 or 5 cards in a row and the initiative switches to them. In my game, both sides were evenly matched, and by the end, both were at 0 morale points and testing for resolve to stay in the fight at the same time. This to me suggests that the rules are well balanced, and victory will go to the side that handles their forces the best. Luck is definitely a factor, but luck is also a fickle mistress, and over the course of the game it appeared to even out, or at least that's how it felt in my game. So what did I get from this game, aside from an enjoyable and exciting solo experience? As mentioned earlier, the purpose of this game was first to learn the rules and second to identify what needed to be done to get the game ready for a wider audience, namely my group Posties Rejects in the Shadow War. Firstly, I need an alternative slimmed down order of battle so that I can play Bosworth on my much smaller table. I'll be using the full scale order of battle when I get onto Postie's massive table. Secondly, I need to make some ongoing melee markers. There are some downloadable flags for this, but I may make a few small casualty markers for this purpose. Third, I also need some morale counters for the battles. The small dice are fine for company resolve, but in this small game the battles still ended up with morale points in the 15 to 19 point range. If I get my whole order of battle out, the battles will be much bigger still, so I need counters that go up to about 50. I may look for a commercial product or I may make something myself, but I need to have a think about this first. Then I need an index to help me find stuff in the rulebook. I've actually already started this, but I need to work on it a bit more so that it's really useful for me in the heat of a game, particularly when I'm running a game for other people and I don't want to look like I don't know what I'm talking about. And lastly, I need to complete my base labelling on the miniatures themselves. This will show the name of the noble associated with the company, indicate the quality of the troops, and then colour code the base edge to show which side they fought on at Bosworth. Again, I've already started this, I just need to get it finished. So there you have it, my brief and no doubt incomplete review of my first play with Test of Resolve. I'm really happy with how the rules played out, and as usual I'll have to read the rules again because I'm sure I missed a few things as I was going along, but this was a very useful learning experience nonetheless. More importantly, I've given myself a solid to-do list of things to work through and complete so that hopefully I can have another bigger playtest on the table in a few weeks' time.